In the glittering halls of Marlborough House, three young princesses grew up in the shadow of their notorious father, the future King Edward VII, a man whose appetite for women was as legendary as his mother's disapproval. But while Bertie scandalised Victorian society with his endless affairs, his daughters would face their own dark destinies, marked by tragedy, rejection, and cruel whispers from courtiers who dubbed them the Hags. Princess Louise Victoria, Alexandra Dagmar, born February 20th, 1867, was the eldest daughter and third child of the Prince and Princess of Wales. Following her came Princess Victoria Alexandra Olga Mary on July 6, 1868, and finally Princess Maud Charlotte Mary Victoria on November 26, 1869. Together, these three would become known as the Wales Sisters, each carrying the burden of their father's reputation and their mother's beauty, a beauty they were cruelly said to lack. The nickname the Hags was a vicious court invention, whispered by courtiers who compared the sisters unfavourably to their stunning mother, Princess Alexandra of Denmark. This cruel moniker would haunt the sisters throughout their lives, particularly affecting their marriage prospects and self-esteem in a society that prized female beauty above all else. Queen Alexandra, despite her legendary beauty, proved to be a possessive and overbearing mother who clung to her daughters with desperate intensity. Known to her children as Mother Dear, she was determined to keep her daughters unmarried and by her side as permanent companions. This maternal possessiveness would create a prison of golden chains, trapping the sisters in roles they never chose. Princess Louise Victoria, Alexandra Dagmar, was born prematurely at Marlborough House on February 20th, 1867, entering the world surrounded by fear for her mother's life. Known as Toots to her family, Louise would become the most tragic figure among Edward VII's daughters, her life marked by scandal, devastating loss, and a shipwreck that would claim her husband's life. Louise grew up under the suffocating control of her possessive mother, Queen Alexandra, who insisted on treating her daughters like children well into their 20s. The humiliation reached its peak when Alexandra threw Louise a child's birthday party for her 19th birthday, a cruel reminder of her mother's determination to keep her daughters unmarried and dependent. Alexandra was described as so controlling that she saw no need for them to get married and leave home, preferring to keep her daughters as permanent companions. Despite her mother's interference, Louise shocked the royal family by choosing to marry for love rather than duty. Her selection of Alexander Duff, 6th Earl of Fife, sent shockwaves through the royal family. The scandal wasn't just his relatively low status as a Scottish earl, but the disturbing 18-year age gap. Louise was only 22 when she married the 40-year-old Alexander on July 27, 1889. Contemporary observers found the age difference inappropriate and unseemly. Alexander himself carried a notorious reputation as a seemingly self-centered and discourteous nobleman, who had previously served as an MP, but was better known for his strong shrewdness in banking and finance. His wealth, rather than his character, seemed to be his primary attraction. Queen Victoria upgraded him to Duke of Fife 2 days after the wedding, but this honour came with its own dark twist. The couple's happiness was shattered on June 16, 1890, when Louise gave birth to a stillborn son named Alistair Duff. This devastating loss would haunt Louise forever, representing not just personal grief, but the failure to secure the Fife dukedom's male heir. She would have 2 more children, daughters Alexandra in 1891 and Maud in 1893, but the shadow of her lost son remained. Louise's greatest tragedy came in December 1911, during what should have been a routine voyage to Egypt. The family boarded the SS Delhi, which ran aground near Cape Spartel on the Moroccan coast during a violent storm. The rescue became a nightmare. 3 boats were swamped, with Princess Alexandra nearly drowning and having to be grabbed by the shoulders by a sailor who held her up until the two were dragged ashore. During the chaotic evacuation, Louise clutched her jewellery case, refusing help from others. When their rescue boat was swamped by enormous waves, the case was torn from her grasp and swept away by the sea, never to be recovered. The loss included irreplaceable royal jewels and, most personally devastating, her private diary containing her most intimate thoughts. The shipwreck's aftermath brought additional humiliation when the press revealed that Louise's extended stay in Tangier wasn't due to injuries, but because she had lost the wig she always wore during the ordeal and refused to appear in public until a new one could be supplied for her. This revelation of her baldness added personal embarrassment to the family's public trauma. The Duke of Fife contracted pleurisy from his exposure during the rescue and died at Aswan, Egypt, on January 29, 1912, leaving Louise a widow at age 44. Her grief was overwhelming. She wrote to Queen Mary, "My children and I have been through great trials. But God is giving us this strength to bear our great sorrow. My beloved Macduff had a beautiful and peaceful end in this silent land." Louise retreated to Scotland as a recluse, suffering from heart disease until her death on January 4, 1931, at age 63. Her sister Queen Maud noted that Louise's death was a release after months of terrible suffering, a tragic end to a life marked by loss, scandal, and the cruel whims of fate. Princess Victoria Alexandra Olga Mary, born July 6, 1868, was destined from birth to live in the shadows. Known as Toria to her family, she possessed a sharp intelligence and cutting wit that made her the most formidable of the three sisters. Yet, she was condemned to a life of servitude by her mother's selfish emotional needs. Victoria was described as having been a lively, intelligent girl with a mischievous streak in her youth, showing promise of a vibrant personality that would be systematically crushed. Her intelligence was noted by all who knew her. She was infinitely more intelligent than her mother, and possessed a wit that could be both entertaining and devastating. However, this sharp tongue would become her weapon against a world that had robbed her of any chance at happiness. The cruel reality of Victoria's fate was sealed when her possessive mother selected her from childhood to be a companion to her needy mother. Queen Alexandra's emotional dependence on her daughter was so extreme that Victoria was transformed into what her cousin, Grand Duchess Olga Alexandrovna of Russia, cruelly but accurately described as little more than a glorified maid to her mother. Victoria's potential suitors tell a heartbreaking story of what might have been. Her cousin, the future Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, showed interest, but the match was never pursued. Crown Prince Christian of Denmark also sought her hand, but the princess rejected him, much to the disappointment of her parents. King Carlos I of Portugal demanded that Victoria convert to Catholicism, which her parents refused to allow. Most tragically, the 5th Earl of Rosebery, a former Prime Minister and widower with 4 children, attempted to win her attention, in vain. Both Victoria and Lord Rosebery would have liked to marry, but her mother actively discouraged all romantic attachments. The nickname the Hags was particularly cruel when applied to Victoria, who was actually described as a handsome woman, despite not inheriting her mother's legendary beauty. The moniker revealed the savage nature of court gossip and the impossible standards placed on royal women. Victoria's sharp intelligence made her situation even more tragic. She understood exactly what she was being denied. Victoria's personality grew increasingly bitter as the years passed. She was described as becoming belligerent, prone to hypochondria, and displaying waspishness and flashes of bitterness. These traits were clearly attributed to the sadness she perhaps felt at having lived much of her life at the beck and call of her mother. Her wit became her defense mechanism, but it couldn't mask the profound loneliness of her existence. The closest relationship in Victoria's life was with her brother George, who became King George V in 1910. They maintained a warm relationship and had similar characters and a mutual sense of humour, speaking daily by telephone until their deaths within a month of each other. When Victoria died in 1935, the king said, "How I will miss our daily phone calls. Nobody had such a sister as I had." This relationship provided Victoria's only true emotional fulfillment, but it couldn't compensate for the life she had been denied. Victoria never married, never had children, and never experienced romantic love. After Queen Alexandra died in 1925, Victoria finally gained her freedom at age 57, but it was too late to build the life she had been denied. She retired to Buckinghamshire and died on December 3, 1935, at age 67 from a stomach hemorrhage. Newspapers described her as having lived an unselfish life, a euphemism that masked the tragic reality of a woman who had sacrificed everything for her mother's neuroses. Victoria's story represents perhaps the darkest tale of the three sisters. A brilliant woman condemned to waste her life as her mother's emotional support system, watching her potential for happiness slowly die with each passing year. Princess Maud, Charlotte. Mary Victoria, born November 26, 1869, was the youngest of the Wales daughters and perhaps the most complex. Known as the tomboy of the three sisters and nicknamed Harry, after a courageous war admiral, Maud's path to the Norwegian throne was marked by unrequited love, cultural alienation, and a marriage that raised eyebrows across royal Europe. Maud's romantic life began with scandal and humiliation. She developed an intense infatuation with Francis of Teck, brother of her sister-in-law Mary of Teck, the future Queen Mary. This unrequited love became a source of public embarrassment when Francis showed no interest in her advances, forcing Maud to face the humiliation of rejected affection within her own extended family. After this romantic failure, Maud settled on Prince Carl of Denmark, but even this relationship carried its own controversies. The princess was nearly 3 years older than her fiancé, an unusual and somewhat scandalous arrangement in an era when men were expected to be older than their wives. They were also first cousins, with Carl's father, Crown Prince Frederick, being the brother of Maud's mother, Princess Alexandra, adding another layer of concern about the genetic implications of their union. Their wedding on July 22, 1896, at Buckingham Palace, was followed by behaviour that caused consternation among the Danish royal family. The couple spent an unprecedented 5 months in England before moving to Denmark, causing serious diplomatic embarrassment when family members, including Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, arrived in Denmark expecting to welcome the newlyweds, only to find they were still lingering in Britain. When Maud finally arrived in Denmark, her inability to adapt became immediately apparent. She struggled to adapt to her new home, particularly its cold winters, and often returned home to Britain. This constant shuttling between countries suggested a deeper emotional instability and inability to commit to her new role. Her homesickness was so severe that she gave birth to her only child, Alexander, at Appleton House in Norfolk, England, rather than in Denmark where she was supposed to be establishing her new life. The couple's transformation into Norwegian royalty in 1905 came about through political circumstances, but it provided Maud with the crown she perhaps always craved. However, even as Queen of Norway, she remained an outsider. Despite living in Norway for over 30 years, she never became fluent in Norwegian and continued to make extended annual visits to England. Her subjects respected her, but she never fully integrated into Norwegian society. Queen Maud's behaviour as monarch continued to raise questions about her commitment to her adopted country. She maintained close ties to England throughout her lifetime, with an extended stay there each year. This constant absence from Norway was unusual for a reigning queen and suggested she viewed her Norwegian crown more as a convenient escape from her difficult family situation than a true calling. The Queen's personality was described as reserved, and she often appeared shy in public, but in private she was known for being warm and vivacious. This contradiction suggests a woman struggling with the role she had been thrust into through political circumstance rather than personal choice. Maud's physical activities, skiing, dancing, cycling and photography, provided her with outlets for her restless energy, but they couldn't mask her fundamental alienation from her adopted country. Her love of outdoor activities was genuine, but it also reflected her need to escape the confines of royal protocol and her uncomfortable position as a foreign queen. The ultimate scandal of Maud's reign was her death in London in 1938 while receiving medical treatment. Even in death, she chose England over Norway, dying in the country of her birth rather than the nation she had ruled for over 30 years. This final act summarised her entire reign, a woman who wore the Norwegian crown, but whose heart remained forever English. Queen Maud's story reveals the dark side of political marriages and the price of royal advancement. Her life was marked by romantic rejection, cultural displacement, and the constant struggle between duty and personal happiness. She achieved the crown that her sisters never would, but it came at the cost of ever truly belonging anywhere. Their legacy serves as a dark reminder that royal birth guarantees neither happiness nor fulfillment. The three daughters of Edward VII lived through some of the most dramatic social changes in British history, yet remained trapped by expectations, duty, and the cruel whims of fate. Their stories reveal the human cost of monarchy, the price paid not just by kings and queens, but by the royal children condemned to live in their shadows. In death, the Wales sisters found the peace that had eluded them in life, but their stories remain as cautionary tales about the dangerous intersection of royal duty, family dysfunction, and public scrutiny that could destroy lives as easily as it could create legends.